Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Nowspeed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of In the Now, where we focus on uncovering the myths and misunderstandings of marketing and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And my guest today is Lisa Perry. Lisa is a global brand marketing executive with more than 15 years of experience in consumer packaged goods, food and beverage, cannabis, gaming, technology, and educational industries, working with Fortune 100 companies to emerging growth startups. She's managed dozens of people and tens of millions in ad budget. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, David.
Just to get started, I've got to ask you, what's more fun, working with a startup or managing a $30 million ad budget?
Oh, they're both so different and so fun in their own ways. Big budgets, right? You get to do a lot of great big things, working with big agencies, working with a ton of different people, getting into big campaigns. All of that is really fun, right? You don't typically get exposed to that kind of stuff. And that's really exciting. But then when you're in a startup, it is, that sense of urgency, that innovation mindset, that pushing yourself and all hands on deck, and you're doing everything. You're not just in one mode doing one thing like in a big company, right? You're in one vertical doing one task or one role. You're doing everything, and it is fun. You're the team is coming together. They're throwing things on the wall, seeing what sticks, and that, like I said, that innovation and that sense of urgency is quite exhilarating as well. So they're very different, and they each have their own excitement and challenges and fun that they bring to the table.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you strike me as the kind of person that would get energy from anything. So that's it's great that you can handle the big project, big company, as well as a startup. Both are challenging and exciting, and
Yeah.
done it all. So I'm excited about getting into some of those issues with you today. As you know, I like to start these conversations with what I call a mythbuster question. And the
Yeah.
question that we've talked about is, and this is what a lot of people believe, especially in the startup community. A lot
Mhm.
of people believe that you don't need branding to be successful. You just need to go out there and get your customers, sell something, get out
Mhm.
there and drive some leads and do it. How do you feel?
Yeah. Well, there are instances where brands can succeed, right, without branding, but increasingly it is much more difficult to sustain growth and navigate a very competitive um, landscape. And without a brand strategy, and I'd love to give you three examples of this, if that works for you. First is initial success, right? A lot of companies can experience initial success based on word of mouth, viral marketing, fleeting trends, and just quite honestly, unique circumstances. However, it is hard to sustain that without a brand strategy. A brand strategy is going to give you that solid foundation to sustain growth, providing you that brand differentiation and a strong customer base. Case in point, I worked for a nutritional startup company that experienced rapid growth over 2 years. 130,000 customer base, 2 million bottles sold, and then sales started to stagnate. So I came in, I conducted a comprehensive analysis, a competitive analysis, a market analysis, a consumer assessment, and data analytics. And boy, I will tell you, based on my evaluation, they had disrupted the marketplace based on their product innovation and established dominance in the category, bringing recognition and success. However, competition came in and replicated their offering due to a lack of differentiation. So the challenge they had was they had an unclear value proposition, an inadequate positioning, and mixed messaging. And that caused consumer confusion, which led to the decline. So yeah, you can have initial success, but with a lack of differentiation, it's going to cause confusion, and you need that brand strategy. So the second thing I want to share is a niche market. So some businesses operate in niche markets or local communities, and they can experience initial success. Personal relationships, referrals, local reputation, that can generate significant results. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that the absence of branding can hinder revenue generation, profitability, and creating that long-term value in the face of competition. It's that competition that always gets in the way, right? So without a strong brand, businesses, struggle to adapt to market changes. They expand their operations and attract investment opportunities, which are crucial for sustained growth and success. And I can give you an example of when I worked in a cannabis industry. Competition started to heat up, large corporations started to enter the market, and states started to legalize, more and more states started to legalize recreational cannabis. And these niche players found it increasingly difficult to maintain their competitive advantage. And the cannabis company that I worked for, they pursued mergers, acquisitions, and brand licensing deals. That was their overall strategy. And these niche brands that they had acquired were losing their competitive advantage. So again, came in, conducted an analysis, business analysis, competitive analysis, market trend minding, and an internal capability audit. And what it found was I needed to develop a brand portfolio architect strategy to understand these niche markets' role that they were playing. Do we invest? Do we divest? Do we maintain? So developing those brand roles helped in increasing their revenue, their profitability, and attract investment opportunities, which ultimately they got acquired. So again, yes, they saw initial success, but the long-term advantages, you need that brand strategy. And the last example I wanted to share with you is established brand reputation. So yes, some companies have relied on their established reputation for years, but then they're experiencing sales decline because of market dynamics, industry trends, and consumer preference shifts. So while traditional reputation and word of mouth has worked in the past, businesses are now looking for that traditional branding approach to help them differentiate in the market, provide that unique value proposition, and build that trust with customers. And case in point, I worked for a private nonprofit business school in a highly competitive higher education landscape. They were struggling with enrollment decline. So again, coming in, doing a deep dive analysis, which is what you need to do, right, when situations like this are occurring. And their strength, based on interviewing students, alumni, and faculty, was that they equipped students to be best for the world leaders. So I executed a positioning strategy and revived their brand identity for the first time in 22 years based on this insight, and launched a marketing campaign around this best for the world leaders. So the result was we had the highest enrollment in 13 years and increased share of voice based on these branding insights and strategy. So these are 3 examples here, right? So yes, you can have initial success without branding, but it's that branding is vital to your brand differentiation, helping you adapt to market changes, helping you, attract investment opportunities, and as you know, sustain that long-term advantage in the marketplace that is so important, David, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, you've said so many cool things. We're going to pack a few of those things, but it strikes me that life would be a lot easier if we all didn't have competitors. Wouldn't that be great?
Right, right. And that's the thread through all of this, right?
Yes,
Those
right.
competitors that come in and can replicate what you're doing without that differentiation and unique point of difference.
Yeah, so let's just dig into that a little bit. So this idea of competitive differentiation, is that how does it relate to branding? Is that just the other side of the coin of branding, or is there more? So what is kind of the relationship between branding and competitive differentiation as you kind of think about it conceptually, at least at a high level?
Well, it's that unique point of differentiation that you need to have. How do you position yourself in the minds of consumers that stands out above the crowd, right? And you've got to do the work, you've got to evaluate the market, uh, and look at what is going on. And do the consumers want it and need it? I've been in businesses where they've got a great idea. They think it's very unique. There's nothing else out there, but consumers don't want it and need it. They launch it and waste all this money, and there's no need or want for it. So, or you go out there and it's a me too, and somebody's already got dominance. So you've really got to evaluate how you're positioning yourself that is unique and different in the minds of consumers, and is there a want and need for that?
I would imagine sometimes you do these strategy engagements, brand strategy engagements, and it's easy to find the point of differentiation. But I bet sometimes it's hard, and maybe that it's hard to come up with, what's really different about the product or service, or is it? Do you always easily find a point of differentiation? And what happens when you don't? Do you kind of go back to the company and say, "Hey, you need to find, work on the product," or do you find another way to help them differentiate?
Well, sometimes I've had hard conversations where, uh, hey, there's not a point of difference here, and we've got to look at divesting from your portfolio, uh, because the cost of redoing is so significant
Mm.
that you're better off looking at other opportunities and thinking up a new idea, right? Um, Now, there are situations where we've got to go back and say, what kind of investment can we do to make this unique or different,
Mm.
right? There are opportunities to do that because right now we don't. What internal capabilities do you have that we can make this unique and different and add it to it? Because sometimes that's me too, and we don't have that. So can there be something that we can add to it? A packaging that's sustainable for the long haul, right? Or internal capabilities to the manufacturing, or something from a service standpoint that we can bring to the table that makes it unique. But sometimes that's a rehaul of what they're doing, a complete rehaul of their product that we've got to take a look at, and
Yeah.
that's a hard conversation too.
And sometimes they can make those investments and sometimes they can't. But do you ever find uh, situations where the brand itself is the differentiation? Can you be in an industry where you have kind of a Me Too product, but you can build the brand to the point, and maybe it's awareness or design, or does it always have to be linked to core facts about the product that are truly different in the mind of the consumer? In other words, can the brand itself be, or when I'm talking about the brand, the expression of the brand, the creative expression of the brand, can that be the point of differentiation? Or is it going to be something core about the product or service?
Well, sure, take a look at the Coca-Cola Pepsi, right? That's a classic example of, um, you know, those are similar, I mean, yeah, the formula is different, but it's a similar product, but there's people so ingrained in the brand. So if you go back to the Pepsi challenge, right, which is classic, right? Pepsi won that, but it did not change at all, the impact to Coca-Cola, because there was so much value in the Coke brand. People were so identity associated with the Coke brand that they didn't care. They didn't care that Pepsi tasted better. It didn't matter at all.
So I love that example. But it feels like Coke and Pepsi both have invested so much in the brand that for the rest of us that are really trying to differentiate and build our product, it feels like what you're saying is we really need to do the research to find some insight to really get an understanding of what the consumer wants and differentiate ourselves clearly in the mind of consumer based on core elements of the product or the service, and then build the brand from there. Is, is that how you
So
think about it?
I love this statistic. People buy emotionally and then rationalize their decision after the fact, right? So you need to go in and figure out what are those emotional drivers and what is the problem that they have that you can solve for that. Because once you connect on an emotional level, you can really build out and build your campaign and your values and your promise and your brand essence and all of those drivers around that and start connecting with them on that level. And that's a lot. That's a more significant proposition than somebody who's just delivering features and benefits.
Yeah,
So that's where you can have a significant advantage in the marketplace.
yeah, that's a really powerful idea. And I feel like many companies, especially service companies or maybe technical product companies, we often think about competitive differentiation in terms of features and benefits, right? And it's easier for us to go into that. But I think it sounds like what you're saying is kind of take that as the base and then connect it emotionally with something and build your brand around that. Can you think of any examples of companies that have done that well? That have kind of built that, that emotional connection, and they could be B2B or B2C companies. Any that come to mind that are good examples of that?
Well, I think when you look at some of these mental health situations that are coming up right now, you've got uh, and I can't think of it, but there are celebrities that are talking about mental health
Mm,
and bringing that into um, the the dialogue, right? You
yeah.
have Colin Kaepernick who brought it into Nike, right, and brought in the emotional conversation, and it helped Nike. That was an emotional conversation, and it elevated them and their brand. So connecting on that kind of a level helps. Serena Williams just recently did this, connecting on an emotional level. I forget what it was, but those kinds of emotional conversations really go far with clearly what Nike did and some of these other celebrities in bringing that emotional connection. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, I've had conversations recently around, it's harder in the B2B, it's harder on a global scale. Um, you can have emotion, no matter what it is. People react on even selling to somebody emotionally, right? People are driven by emotions when you're connecting and selling, whether it's out of fear, anxiety, it's all out of emotions, right? So if you can connect on that emotion level and relate to them on an emotion and appeal to what's going on and show them how it's helping their business and convert that back, you're still showing that emotions and that value and driving it back. So you want to figure out what it is emotionally that's helping them and driving them on a personal level and then relating it back to their business,
Yeah.
no matter what it is from a global or a business. So people can get hung up that like, oh, well, it's business to business. It doesn't matter. We're all human. We all react emotionally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it can make a powerful difference to the brand. I want to take us back to the MythBuster premise that we were talking about, that you don't really need branding to be successful. And it strikes me that that is what we're really talking about is a decision process that CEOs and leaders need to go through in order to decide to invest in the brand in a different way. And in the three scenarios that you outline, especially let's start with the first one, that initial success. I can imagine in that circumstance, and you've seen this firsthand, where you've got an organization that's growing like crazy. They're growing through word of mouth, or maybe they've got a unique product. They're really going out there. How do they know when it start to run out of gas that initial business model and they need to invest in the brand? How do they figure that out? And in your experience, do they wait too long, or do most organizations start to invest in the brand before it's too late? You know,
I would personally say that people need to invest before, because you need to identify before you even kick it off, because you need to identify, can somebody come in and replicate you?
hmm.
Because in that first situation, competitors came in and replicated them. So, you've got to figure out how you can be unique and then build off of that emotionally, so that if somebody is trying to attack you, you're already got a customer base that's so emotionally connected with you, like Coke, that's not going to change and move on a dime when so many competitors are coming into the marketplace, that you can try and get a competitive advantage that is so hard to break.
Yeah.
So you've got to do the work up front, and that's not always going to be bulletproof. But here's the other thing, is that innovation is always another thing that you've got to do. You've always got to be innovating. So as competitors come in and try and knock you down, you're continually innovating and you're ahead of them. You're ahead of them because you're continually taking your brand to the next level. So that's another key strategy to the wheel of branding, is that you're continually innovating and elevating your game as you're meeting your customers' needs.
So it's not enough to just build your brand once. In You've got to continue to evolve the brand, or build on the brand story as you innovate and you grow through growing that company. Is that how you kind of think about it?
So let's take a look at Apple, right? So and even Elon Musk, right? So Apple, uh, came in, brought in, or developed the computer. It wasn't their innovation, right? They weren't the first to do that, but then all of a sudden they're continually innovating, right? And they innovated the smartwatch. They disrupted the watch industry. They're not watch people. They're not, so they're continually innovating. Then you take Elon Musk, he's got the car, he's innovating the car. Now he's doing out into outer space. That's not his area of expertise, right? With NASA, right? So you've got to continually innovate your business. And now, granted, that's a different vertical, and you could say now he's gone into another vertical that's not doing well, but you've got to take a look at your business and continually up your game and offer your customers what they need. And I would say within Apple, they are continually working to up their game and try and provide customers what they need. And that's what you need to do, so that as people continue to come in, you're less bulletproof. Yeah, I mean, you're less, you've got your armor on, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you've got that innovation strategy, and it's going perfectly aligned with those companies, especially Apple is aligned with their brand strategy. Their brand
Yeah.
supports that fully. Let's talk a little bit more about that second example that you gave, the niche markets, and I guess that could be large or small companies, but I often think of that as small companies or maybe startups that are kind of starting their organization or their company based on, like what you said, personal relationships or their network, or they're kind of growing, and they think that that initial success will continue to carry them. So they don't invest in their brand because they're having success, right? So when is it again that those individuals, and you can think of many different service businesses or other industries, when do they start to kind of realize that the brand is important for them to continue to grow and be successful?
Well, 90% of startups fail.
Mm.
10% succeed in the first year. 10%. So I would say investing in your branding strategy is critical in the beginning. Figuring out how am I, what is the market like? Who am I going after? Do they want it? How do I make sure that I am offering something different and unique? And I can connect with my customers on an emotional level. I think that's pretty important
Yeah. And I think,
right out the gate.
yeah, I totally agree with you. And I feel like many entrepreneurs and, you know, founders struggle with investments in branding. And based on what you're saying, I'm trying to understand why. Why do you think that we both agree that it's very important for startups and other companies to do that? But why would an entrepreneur ignore it and just focus on other things without doing the hard work in branding?
I think that there's a cost to it, a high cost to it. And sure, there could be. You could spend lots of money, but you can also do it cost effectively. You can find ways to research your connect with your consumers on a cost effective way. There are surveys that you can do that are very cheap to free. You know, you can do this very cost effectively. You can develop a strategy. You can do the work with your team to figure out who do we want to be, who do we want to go after. There are free resources out there to do the analysis competitively, look at the market, understand the business situation, understand the climate, do a good SWOT analysis, do a good pestle analysis. You can do that work. It's just doing the work, right? And spending the time. You're already investing in all the other work, so do it. This can attract other financial investment opportunities to say, hey, here's what we're seeing. I'm sure they would love that. So do the work and show that, hey, we've got a clear advantage in the marketplace on who the consumer is, who our unique point of advantage is. So I think there's that barrier of, we think it's going to cost a lot of money. We think it's going to require a lot of work. You can do it pretty quickly. There are people out there that can help. There's Upworks, there's freelancers, there's consultants that can do it on the cost effectively. So I think there's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you can make a very compelling case for starting off with branding from the very beginning. And you're absolutely right that you can start cost effectively, and then you can invest as you grow, right? You can invest more in promoting the brand or advertising the brand or growing the brand or making it more sophisticated really over time, right? You don't have to spend all that much money up front. It feels like, though, one of the hardest things, what you're describing, though, is a lot of deep thinking and core decisions. And I wonder, in your experience, if those core decisions are what's keeping entrepreneurs from focusing on the brand. It's like those are a lot of tough decisions. What we have to really focus on, what core target audience we want to go after. What product features are most important? Who are we going to stand against competition? Is it kind of some of those core decisions that we're avoiding? So maybe we want to be all things to all people in the beginning, and it's
Yeah,
easier.
I, I, I think it's I think it's very hard for entrepreneurs to be. This is a general statement, but I want to appeal to the masses instead of
Yeah.
being very targeted. And quite honestly, when you are very targeted, you are much more cost effective in your marketing and sales. It costs more to go after everybody. When you are targeted, you can get a better return on your investment. But it's hard to get people to get real targeted and figure out who they want to go after. That's a hard exercise. It's not easy, right? So, you've got to do the hard work up front to say, who do I really want to go after? And it's scary to say, well, I'm going to miss all these people. Well, they'll come, but you got to be very focused on your messaging on this core and your investment on this core. Doesn't mean you're going to not get other people, but being very focused on that is
Yeah.
critical.
It's so important. So, making those choices, right? Who do I want to be? How am I going to be different? And who do I want to go after? Those core branding. And when you do the research and really know what's going on, it's much easier. And I think that that's why a lot of organizations reach out to branding experts like you, who can really help facilitate that conversation, because it's hard to make those choices, it feels like, without an outside expert sometimes coming in and helping guide the process.
Right.
So you
Right.
find that a lot of your job is really building alignment within the management team based on
Yeah.
the research and other things you're sharing?
And it's a journey, right? It's a journey of sharing the data, sharing examples, sharing how it will benefit, because it can be scary sometimes. But yeah, it is a process to show how they can benefit, and doing some examples and doing some testing to show that.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, this has been a really powerful conversation. I think
It's
that
been
what you're
fun.
describing in branding here, in some of the examples you've given, it's the difference between growing an incredibly successful company and losing your way and being beat by competition. These are big choices that you help people through, and you can make an immense difference in the lives of lots of companies and lots of people. So it must feel pretty good to be making that kind of an impact.
Oh, it's fun. I love it.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, I really appreciate you joining the conversation today. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
show. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about your services or how you can help them, how would they do that?
Through LinkedIn, as well as captivatingsolutionsco.com.
That's awesome. And we'll put a link to all of that in the episode today. So thanks again for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much, Dave.